Greetings and welcome to Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. Here we like to expand our conversation to include the history, past, present, as well as in the making. We also look at the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on social media at Coach_Harp412 and Facebook under Jamar Harp. Please make sure you get social with Sports 101 and a litany of other shows sponsored by SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. SportsZone Chicago can be found on Twitter at SportsZoneCHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, SportsZone Chicago is the world's only Black-owned sports talk app. You can watch and listen to my show as well as many others. Any new shows that are coming out, you can learn about SportsZone Chicago at night. Keep up with breaking sports news. If you miss something, don't worry about it. Go to YouTube, search Sports Zone Chicago, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Sports Zone Chicago. Everyone needs to do that, but more importantly, we need everyone with 2 ears, a heartbeat, and feet to go to the Sports Zone Chicago app and download that. The Sports Zone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Now, for this week, we're going to do an intro video before we begin tonight's topic. So I'd like to share that with you before we begin, and then we'll take it from there.
And now the All Blacks just waiting for the French to peel off the tracksuits, stand in front of them, and receive the challenge of the haka. Well, the challenge has been received by the French. Stand by, the Rugby World Cup final.
So as you can see, tonight's episode is about rugby, and actually our title is Rugby Origins and Participation in the African Diaspora. That first video obviously was a haka, or a tribal dance done by the Maori and different Polynesian tribes when they go to war for victory, birthdays, etc. And it's permeated into the rugby culture to intimidate opponents. And they brought that in. Again, that is a part of the African diaspora, because if you ever looked at the Polynesian islands in the 1960s, 70s, well, you will see the historical references there. All right, our next picture is of Sima Kolosi. Now, Sima Kolosi is a South African rugby player. He was born in 1991, and he's the current captain of the South African national team, and plays his club or his pro rugby for the Sharks in the Courier Cup. He generally plays flanker, so he's an outside player who tries to score like a winger in soccer per se. In 2018, Khaleesi was appointed captain of the Springboks, becoming the first black man to hold the position. He eventually led the South African rugby team to victory in the 2019 Rugby World Cup final against England. In December of 2019, Khaleesi was named the New African Magazine's list of 100 most influential Africans. So again, his exploits in rugby have helped him in his political and professional life as well, outside of the rugby field. We're going to show a quick video, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Mr. Khaleesi.
To get on your feet, stand up, stand up. Come on, get loose with the heat. Right now. Beat the body till you black out. So get the fuck up.
Excuse me. So right there, you saw some highlights of Mr. Khaleesi and his exploits on the rugby field. Now, many people look at that, but what he did was much more greater on the political and social scene as well. If anyone's familiar with the Nelson Mandela biopic, in which the Springboks, the rugby team, was featured, the national team in South Africa since its inception has been a symbol of apartheid and segregation. Um, and that's basically referencing how the Europeans came over and basically, like everywhere else, tried to colonize. However, there's still a lot of people there, and they're still fighting that. Hence, the racism and apartheid and segregation in their own homelands. During this time, many did not want the team to integrate during Mandela's presidency. Again, for so long, it's like all the pro sports being in the South during the Civil War. So a lot of people probably wouldn't like them if they lived in different parts of the country. So it was similar to that with the indigenous people of South Africa, as again they were facing racism in their own homeland. This changed, however, um, and it was very similar to what happened when USC played Alabama in the 1960s, when Randall Cunningham's brother Sam Cunningham was on the team. And after that game, and henceforth Mandela's first term, when he integrated the Springboks, you begin to see more players of African descent play for the Springboks, as well as other local teams in the country of South Africa. They also made a video to demonstrate and show unity throughout the country, even though there's still an apartheid system. There was Olympics there, a World Cup about 10 years ago, I believe. So there's been some professional sporting events that came to South Africa. However, the system of apartheid is still there. We want to get that eradicated, but I just want to show you a video that they made, and this is tying in rugby and the Springboks to a national social issue, which is apartheid and segregation.
This is Joubert, chips through, but it's beyond small, but picked up by Williams. Caught just short of the line, he's carried over, and Chester Williams has scored again.
Okay, so as you can see right there, that video demonstrated the so-called unity that they want to display in South Africa. Now, South Africa has changed, but it still faces a staunch system of apartheid and racism similar to the United States, in particular with the indigenous people not to be able to own a lot of property. There's still a lot of effects of the diamond companies, in particular De Beers, coming in and the profits going overseas. If you follow South African politics, there's been a lot of politicians voting for the eradication of the Boers and other groups that aren't indigenous, who are not respecting the people of their homeland. So again, that's just showing you an example how powerful rugby or any sport can be, is that it can bring foreign countries such as South Africa together, even just to make that video. Like I said, they have a lot more to go, but that is somewhat of a start. Now I'd like to talk about the origins of rugby. Rugby union, or most commonly known as rugby, is a close contact team sport similar like fumble ante or pickup football. It originated in England in the first half of the 19th century. One of the two codes of rugby football was based on running with the ball in your hand. Again, very similar to street football that we play, in our neighborhoods one on one. You get tackled, you throw the ball backwards. In the most common form, the game is played between two teams of 15 players each, using a ball oval shaped, something like the American football, on a rectangular field called a pitch, just like soccer. On the field, they have eight-shaped goalposts at both ends, which mimics or is very similar to American football. Rugby union is the most popular sport around the world. It's played by both men and women of all ages. And in 2014, statistics showed that there was more than 6 million people playing rugby worldwide. And of that 6 million, 2.3 million were registered in some type of professional or semi-pro or amateur league, such as collegiate. In 1845, we just see the first laws of rugby, and they were from pupils at a rugby school, hence where the name came from. Other significant events that happened in its early development included the decision by Blackheath Football Club to leave the Football Association or soccer in 1863, and in 1895 they split between rugby union and rugby league. We'll get to those differences a little later, but basically you had a team leaving soccer and transitioning into a new sport, which is rugby. Historically, rugby union was an amateur sport. However, in 1995, formal restrictions on payment to players were removed, making the game openly professional at the highest level for the first time. In 2014, with more than 6 million people playing worldwide, and again, 2 million were registered. Since its inception, rugby union has spread in the home nation of Great Britain and Ireland, and other nations have made it their national sport, including Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and France. Again, the title video also demonstrates the popularity of rugby in the Polynesian Islands, which are also a part of the African diaspora. Other places that prominently follow rugby is the British Isles, France, Oceania, which is like the Polynesian Islands, those region, Southern Africa, Argentina, Italy, Uruguay, the United States, Canada, and Japan. And a lot of this is through colonization, and particularly of the British Empire, and through the French proponent. We have also used the term rugby Europe, as they use colonization to spread their ideals, not only politically but socially and for leisure as well, which rugby is included. Again, some of the countries that have adopted rugby as their national sport are Fiji, Georgia, Madagascar, New Zealand, Samoa, Tonga, and Wales. National club and provincial competitions include the Premiership in England. This is different than the Premier League. That's soccer. This is the Premiership. That's rugby. The top 14 league in France. The Bunnings NPC League in New Zealand. The top league in Japan. And then the Courier Cup, which is the league in South Africa. You also have other transnational club competitions, which include the United Rugby Championship, and that includes club teams, which are professional teams from Ireland, Italy, Scotland, South Africa, and Wales, as well as Europe. You have a Champions Cup in Europe as well, a Super Rugby Pacific Cup in Australia, New Zealand, as well as in the Pacific Islands. So that's really just basically showing you the impact of rugby through colonization that it's had. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back to Sports Zone Chicago, we'll delve into more sides of rugby, including problems in the professional ranks in Britain right now, and some grassroots efforts to start rugby in the African American community in the United States. I'm Jamar Harp, and this is Sports 101. We'll be right back.
Please stop and listen, because this important message may directly apply to you or someone dear to you. Several thousand African American former full-time CPS teachers were unfairly terminated starting in the mid-90s and continuing to the 2000s. If you are one of those many former CPS teachers who was unjustly terminated, or if you are the immediate relative of a now deceased unjustly terminated former CPS teacher, you may qualify to participate in a lawsuit at no upfront cost to you. Please call 773-580-7183 immediately for more information. That's 773-580-7183.
Watch the Chicago way.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I'm Jamar Harp, and again, it's the Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. Here, we like to talk about the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective, using the lens of history in the past, present, as well as in the making. Please make sure you get social with Sports 101 and the litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago, and following SportsZone Chicago on social media. You can find SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel for SportsZone Chicago, and more importantly, please download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Now, that last commercial we saw was for SportsZone Chicago at night. That's something new that's coming out. Brainchild of my sensei, Maya Kai, and one of the co-founders of SportsZone Chicago, Sean Sierra. So again, stay tuned for SportsZone Chicago at night. You think what you got now is good, you don't know what you're in store for. Like a piece of cheese on a great fish sandwich. Man, it could be better. Getting back to this week's episode, before break, we briefly discussed the origins of rugby and its impact um, in politics and societal issues, and particularly in South Africa. Now, I would like to go talk about some racial issues that are happening in the British rugby scene. Now, remember, this is where rugby was founded. As you know, most people like the Premier League, which is the number one soccer league or top soccer league, like Major League Baseball. They have AAA, AA, etc. So the Premier League is a top soccer league, not only in England but of all of professional football. So you know about their racial issues. So again, here's a picture describing that. That's one of the star players from Manchester United and their No Room for Racism campaign. Again, there's still a lot of stuff that needs to be done, but at least they're addressing it. So again, similar to the Premier League, there is a constant parallel, and you have problems with not only rugby on a professional level, but the system in general. This next picture right here is a African man who was born in England named Clive Sullivan. He became the first black captain of the British national sporting side when he led Great Britain to the World Cup in 1972. Our next brother we have right here is Jason Robinson. He's a product of Wigan, and he's a Union World Cup winner for England in 2003. He was the first player of African descent to captain England's rugby union side. Now, remember, these are firsts that are happening in the 1970s and the 2000s. So that goes to show, how far these organizations are lagging behind in regards to diversity and inclusion of all its citizens. Now let's fast forward to 2010, and that number in professional rugby in England has only risen to a mere 25. This last season, there's only 11 players of African descent who were born in Britain that were featured in the league. In previous seasons, and if you look at last season's Premier League, that figure was almost 7 times higher. A lot of people are asking, what is rugby doing wrong? And it's very clear that there's a lot more need to be done than Robinson and some of the other African rugby players are saying. For example, Robinson said he grew up in Hard Hills, which is a stone's throw away from Headingley, where Leeds plays rugby, and you see very few black people at the rugby game. He stated when he was younger, he wanted to see black people on the field, and he identified with Ellery Hanley, or someone he can look up to. And he said if there wasn't numbers on the top, that would create a problem for young kids because they didn't see themselves in the sport, they couldn't be inspired to play it. So that's one big part of the issue. He is trying to correct this in his hometown by starting youth and grassroots programs to get other individuals of African descent introduced to rugby at a young age. The reason is for that is because Leeds, which is outside of London, has one of the largest black communities in North England has produced great rugby players such as Robinson himself, Hanley, and the great Jamie Jones Buchanan. Um, again, besides England, he's also working with the Jamaican national side to try to entice more young black children to play, believing the sport is fairly on many levels. The actual statistics state that less than 8% of players in the community game identify as black, Asian, or minority or ethnic. When you count solely black players or individuals of African descent, that number is even lower. Alex Simons, who works alongside with Robinson with the Jamaican rugby team, said, we honestly have to look in the mirror as a sport and set some ambitious targets surrounding equality, diversity, and inclusion. Um, Many people stating the sport hasn't had a mechanism in its recent history to inspire black communities, but with Jamaica qualifying for the World Cup, many think that'll be the linchpin. In other sports, we saw, as for example, Tiger Woods or some of Ghana's big wins in World Cups that inspired other people to play soccer domestically, even United States. With this national team being more inclusive of individuals of the African diaspora. So seeing more people play the sport is also a great way to help. Um, and back then, those days, if you did go to a rugby game, you'll struggle to see 50 faces that look like you, or 50 black faces in a crowd of 15 to 20,000. The next question was posed was, how do you get kids from schools and they're playing amateur rugby and watching games? I say, again, it's systematic and it comes from the top. Just like kids play street football, you want to introduce the sport in a more leisure or free play style, and then do the concepts later once people get used to playing it. Right now, only 5 black players have represented England since 2011 for the national team. In that same period, 12 have been capped by their union counterparts of other countries. If you look at the contrast, in the past 3 years, 16 black players have played for England's men's national soccer team. Soccer or football in the communities doesn't is doing regular work, and rugby isn't. Simmons and a lot of other black rugby players are saying. Until you get proper pathways at the bottom and exposure, and the numbers at the top will never change. There's also sentiment in the black community in England that is underrepresented uh, on purpose, not only in playing, but in administrative levels as well. This picture right here is the only black coach in professional rugby in England. And his name is Jermaine Coleman. He's the head coach of the London Skolars and also the head coach of the Jamaican national team, who he coached at this past World Cup in 2021. Coleman stated there's not a single black chief executive or administrator, um, and that the facts speak for themselves. Leon Price also echoed these sentiments, and he's a British international who was also involved with rugby. Again, if the game was marketed like street football and used rugby sevens instead of union rugby at first, so if you ever watch rugby sevens and that's 7-on-7, you can use a lot more of your speed and agility, and it's not all the clanky banging in the middle. So I think that would entice more kids to play, so they can use their athleticism and play on the outside. And then from leisure or free play rugby, then the rugby sevens, and then the union rugby where it's 15 on 15. I think it will introduce that way more people in the African diaspora to participate. So again, similar to the Premier League, the Rugby Football League has accepted the need to improve participation, and they introduced pillars aimed at diversity as well as different tenets to try to get more people in the African diaspora in England to be involved in the sport. If you look at the drop of the numbers, the change is coming at a crucial moment for the sport because you have other sports vying for all this TV and airtime. Professional soccer, you have basketball growing in Great Britain and other places in Europe, and now American football. So again, there's so much competition. Everyone wants the same athletes to enhance their sport, and mainly these are athletes of the African diaspora. Our next picture is of the HBCU rugby casket that we'll talk about. The HBCU Rugby Classic and Music Festival is a music festival that's been taking place since around 2018. This year, it'll be held on March 26th and 27th in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The HBCU Rugby and Music Festival is a premier rugby event that celebrates historically black colleges and universities, rugby, as well as music and culture. Since its inaugural event in 2018, the HBCU Rugby Classic has featured historically black colleges and universities that carry rugby programs and efforts to bring awareness and opportunities to a sport that many haven't saw played by people that look like them. They also often feature youth teams as well as women's and girls teams as well. In 2022, you have some of the same college teams as well as the new rivalries, new music artists, and different things to bring more excitement and people to come. If you want to get an update on teams and schedules at the HBCU Rugby Classic, you can go to hbcurugbyclassic.com or follow on Facebook and Instagram at HBCU Rugby Classic or Twitter at HBCU Rugby. The founder of the event and hosting company Gift Daily of the Gift Tab Productions wanted to merge their love of rugby with black culture. Again, the Classic is a cultural event that entertains sports fans and families of all ages. I bring in the spotlight and awareness to a community that is underrepresented in the sport and can be used as a gift of unity, empowerment, and positivity, meaning a lot of these youth are doing something positive instead of being out in the streets. The Classic is also going to highlight black culture and music as well. There's going to be food festivals there, concerts throughout the weekend event, excuse me. And it's going to showcase, again, a lot of the elements of the African diaspora and its culture. This event is not just to promote sports, it's going to provide insight and knowledge for black culture using sports as the vehicle to get people to come. Ebola said there's more to our community than being the strongest or the fastest. Being empowered with the knowledge and other skills that you need to shine, the HBCU Rugby Classic will provide that and showing that we can do more than the traditional, what we've been quote unquote programmed to do. In the past, musical performers were from the local Louisiana area as well as around the nation. Past festivals had performers such as Michael Armistad, Jamal Steele, Felicia Brown, and Alex, aka Poetic Soul. This year's Classic will also host its first Battle of the Bands competition. So they're going to bring different high school bands out and have a Battle of the Bands so they can get a trophy. Again, just get more people inclusive to this event outside of rugby. And for people that are not athletes as well. So you can love music, you can love culture, you can love sport, you can be a foodie, you can bring your family out. So please look up the HBCU Rugby Classic. This is, again, a chance to prove that black and brown people can be more than entertained with their physical attributes, introducing some music, educational things, poetry, things like that, are showing a diverse talent pool to our youth. This year, the teams participating in the HBCU Rugby Classic as Morehouse College, Prairie View A&M, Roots Rugby, Louisiana, Legnape Rugby, Memphis Inner City Rugby, Dallas Youth Rugby, and Dallas Youth Rugby Girls. All these teams will represent at different levels, including the adult level, high school, as well as the international level. Again, the Classic is a part of the adult rugby team's international touring schedule and rugby competition that makes stops worldwide. So this is a competitive athletics being played at this HBCU Rugby and Cultural Festival. The rugby players also provide mentorship for different youths that come, opportunities for other players to network, and entertainment through communities throughout the tour. So I want to show you a quick video of some highlights of a game. I believe this is the Memphis Inner City team playing in 2021. So please take a few snippets of this video, and then we'll close out this week's show.
Go ahead.
All right, we're here at the HBCU Rugby Classic, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Start of the third game, we have Memphis Inner City Rugby playing the Dallas Youth Boys. And I believe Memphis is in yellow.
Yes.
And Dallas is in the red jerseys. Game just started, no score. Both these teams have a mission to bring rugby to their inner city and urban kids who may not be exposed to the game in other ways. It's good programs going on here. Great to see youth rugby. So Memphis is on the attack. Whistle here, bringing the ball back. Penalty awarded to Memphis. So there was no advantage. Quick tap by Memphis. Oh, and he sneaks through right at the try line, trying to bring it in. Oh, somehow the ball gets out for a try there on the outside. All right, so score Memphis 5, Dallas 0. First score of the ball game. HBCU Rugby Classic, 5-0 Memphis over Dallas. These are the youth teams. Going for the point after kick here. A lot of movement in front of him. Oh, and nope, kick is no good. It's a good attempt, though. Very good attempt. HBCU Rugby Classic brought to you by PSK Collective, founded by Phaedra Knight and created by a collective of professional female athletes coming together in order to have a positive impact on young girls. PSK Collection merges streetwear with athletic apparel and is geared towards the Gen Z athlete. We design clothing infused with the spirit of independence and empowerment meant for all bodies and all sizes. Kick after the score is about to go off and Memphis is kicked. Dallas lets it bounce, never a good thing. Memphis on the steal. Always catch that ball in the air if you can. Dallas just looked at it. And that's what happens. It bounce can go anyway. Memphis on the attack on the outside. Foot race. And he's going to attempt to center it. And he does. Score now 10-0 Memphis.
All right, so right there, we saw a quick clip of two youth teams playing. Let's give a shout out to them and their efforts to bring rugby to their cities respectively, Memphis and Dallas. Those young men can have been doing a lot of other things besides playing rugby. So we want to shout their efforts out again for just doing something positive. In closing, what are our takes on rugby and its exposure and impact on the African American community? The first thing is exposure brings opportunity. With more exposure, you're going to find those diamonds in the rough that have been playing another sport. Could have been the third or fourth alternate on the track team, third or fourth offensive lineman, and now they're the best at rugby scrums. Next, the usual is the new norm. Creating diversity is going to help any sport or organization grow, especially when you have competition against other people in the same sector. Rugby is not only competing with other rugby teams, but baseball, basketball, football, as well as soccer for that African American athlete. The last thing is, please don't pigeonhole any child, boy or girl, into anything specific. Exposure to many different sports creates awareness and brings not only exposure, but just a more well-rounded individual. You have more talking points, and just can relate to more people because you're around people. You're in positions of leadership, and it's been said so many times how sports can provide character building example, especially for teens growing through things. So if you pigeonhole your children, they may not have the opportunity to be the next rugby star, soccer star, swimming star, etc. So please open up everything. If they so interest, let them do it. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Sports 101. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on social media on Twitter at Coach_Harp412 and Facebook under Jamar Harp. Please get social with SportsZone Chicago and a litany of other shows, Sports 101, and a litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago while following SportsZone Chicago on social media. SportsZone Chicago we found on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app will find the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Again, I would like to thank you for tuning in this week's episode of Sports 101. I'm your host, Jamar Hart. Be sure to come see me next week at our normally scheduled time, Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for coming out, and I'm gone.
That's the Chicago way.